Cool. Let's hope this works. So yeah, we're here to talk about responsible disclosure, and we kind of have a bit of an interesting talk planned. So who am I? I actually own my own company. I work as day after exploit. We do a lot of kind of risk mitigation, a lot of, well, we try to reach out to vendors and other clients, try and kind of, we find a lot of things kind of in our honeypots and all that, which kind of show a lot of problems with them, and we try to kind of fix that. So I started off my career kind of as a black hat, which is kind of an interesting thing for a lot of people, but it actually is quite a common thing for the younger generation now. Yeah, so I kind of, I mean, I've been featured in Wired article, I've been featured in Ars Technica, I've been featured in Darknet Diaries very recently, probably a few weeks back, I think a month we're going up to. And I do a lot of talking at, say, B-sides. I also frequent a lot of B-sides and other conventions.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm not quite as interesting. My main background is a malware analyst, where I mostly talk about ransomware. I talked at StillCon this year on cryptographic flaws in ransomware and kind of making fun of how dumb ransomware authors can be. And also I'm on the committee for the Royal Holloway Computing Society, and we're always looking for people to talk at our university. So if anyone's interested, please message me or talk to me after.
Cool. So basically, this talk should not be taken as legal advice. Do not kind of go away and be like, what, I can hack these things, or I can kind of talk to these vendors and all that, and these naughty vendors, and try and get what I want. Not going to happen. What we do, we have legal advisors behind us, so it's possible for us to do this kind of things. So types of disclosure, let's go straight into that. We have public disclosure, which is, let's go responsible disclosure first, which is also known as coordinated disclosure. We have full disclosure, which is public disclosure as well. It's kind of where you just branch out. Then we have non-disclosure, where you kind of do nothing. But let's kind of branch into that again. So responsible disclosure is where you kind of work with the vendor to kind of fix those issues. And that's kind of, either contacting the vendor themselves, or reaching out to CERT, or using a bug bounty program, or any way you can actually get in touch with that vendor to kind of coordinate a proper approach to kind of fixing that problem. The other way is kind of full disclosure, or what I call public disclosure, which is just kind of branching out to everyone without really thinking about the consequences. And that's kind of not really a good way to do it. Google's kind of Project Zero does that. A few different places kind of do that. A lot of people do that. Sandbox Escaper. A lot of them kind of try and just throw things out there, and don't really care what the vendor does, don't really care for the fix, just kind of throw it out there and hope that everything goes well. It's not really a good way to do it. It's kind of like a villain kind of way to do it sometimes. Sometimes it works, but usually it's kind of not really in the benefit of the vendor or the public. So there's a few principles to disclosure, and that would be communication. Communication's a big one. You kind of want to be able to communicate properly with the vendor, kind of want to make sure you can talk in kind of their kind of words. You don't want to be like technical enough where they're not going to understand what you're trying to say, or they're going to interpret you as kind of a threat or something, and not as a security researcher, which is what you are. Integrity is a big one. You see where there was a thing with Uber quite a while ago, which they kind of had some guys come along, security researchers in a sense, and they were like, well, we have a problem, and we've taken all the information, and 10 grand's not enough, we want more. And that's where your integrity is kind of not there. In the end, they went to jail. Transparency, that's kind of where you want to lead to. You want to have kind of a nice log of what you've done. You want to make sure that everything's black and white. You want to be like, hey, this is exactly what I've done. But let's kind of break this down. The triangle really is patience, because without patience, you shouldn't even disclose, because you're kind of not really getting anywhere. Patience is what you're going to do the entire time. You're just going to wait and wait and wait, and we're going to come to some examples of that in a while. But without patience, you're wasting your time. So there is some rewards to disclosure, and sometimes you do get rewarded, sometimes you don't. So really, you can go, oh, the slide went a bit odd. Basically, you can kind of have, where you get nothing, or you might get a thanks, and sometimes you get, money, you get all different kinds of, gifts, anything they want to give you. Gift cards sometimes. I think a lot of companies actually give Amazon gift cards now. Typically it's a thanks though. Some money might get transacted, but it's not likely, and don't expect that when you do disclosures. Kind of expect to go into it as, oh, I'm going to disclose this, and I might get thanked for this, but I'm going to actually do this to kind of help everyone else who uses this platform or uses this vendor or uses the software, because you're kind of really doing it just to kind of fix these issues. But yeah, a lot of the time you do get bug bounty programs where they will actually give you rewards, and they have structures for that in place. But if you're just doing it where you reach out to the vendor, don't expect them to give you anything. That's where you go into bug bounty programs, really. So coming up to our first disclosure example, Beer 52, they do a lot of, they're based in Edinburgh. They're a kind of boutique beer company. They kind of give out beer to people who do a subscription kind of basis, box of beer every month or whatnot. So basically, if we can get that working, can we go into the, can we click on it? So I'll throw up the proof of concept, one of the proof of concepts we actually came up with first. If we can get it working.
Explain it to us.
All right. Basically, we found that in basically the Beer52's platform, they weren't actually sanitizing any code. So you were able to kind of break out of that with your typical colon, whatever it is. You could basically run XSS or whatever you want through their platform. In this, we were trying to do basically edit your profile. You could change your name and kind of throw up a kind of XSS injection, and you'd be able to pull that up. That, however, didn't really affect anyone else. But what we did find was in the invite someone to a referral program, you could actually kind of inject the code into your profile, and anyone you gave a referral invite to would actually get that injection when they loaded your link. So it wasn't really a good thing to kind of come up with. But we went ahead and we shot off an email to who we could find in the emails. I believe we found it off LinkedIn or possibly for their website. I don't remember at this time. Basically, we gave them a bit of a thing. We said, we know you don't have a bug bounty program. We know you don't really participate in anything. But there's a few small and quite major kind of issues with some things we found. We'd love to disclose. We would love some kind of swag along the way, and that's kind of a nice way to put it, as in like, hey, we don't really, we know you're not going to give us money, but if you can give us something, that'd be great. And a lot of times, that's probably the best way to go about not trying to look like you're kind of just going in there just to disclose for money, because that can also be seen as extortion. So you kind of want to word it properly in such a way that doesn't really say, hey, I just want money and then I'll give you something, because that's not really a good way to do it, and that will oftentimes land you in legal trouble. So yeah, they gave us a nice email back, and they said, it's quite hard for us to test everything. It's which is quite normal with a lot of these kind of platforms. We do have a bug list, but if you can disclose what you've found, go ahead. And that's what we did, really. So we gave them the proof of concept. Along the way, we actually had the, I believe, founder kind of email us while the engineer was talking to us. And the founder was like, you know what, we'll give you some free beer. And we're like, that's great. So, we went ahead, gave them a bunch of proof of concepts, everything we kind of found along the way, and none of these links work, so don't bother. I do think some XSS does still work, but it's only kind of on your profile, and you'll kind of get stuck where you won't be able to cancel the subscription, so go ahead. Basically, they were thankful for this, and they were like, you know what, here's some free beer. So we got a bunch of free beer next day. It was great. It was probably one of the best, the fastest responses to a disclosure we had. But there are a lot of risks in disclosure as well. And a lot of them are legal threats. Legal threats are probably on the top of the list. But we'll go into that. There'll be sleepless nights where you do not, you kind of wonder, am I going to get sued? Am I going to get thrown in jail? Because being thrown in jail is probably not something you want to do as a security researcher, but that can happen. But also, a vendor might assault you along the way. I think there's probably one time a security researcher has been assaulted, and that happened to me when I visited the vendor at a expo, and was like, you know what, I want to put a face to a face, and I want to say hi. Because after several months of emails back and forth, it's kind of I'm just talking to a blank name. And it's like, well, I want to put a face to it. And they were like, no, I want to grab you and pull you in. But anyway, that's one of the risks you take apparently, and that's a new risk on my kind of security bingo. But yeah, going into that vendor, that is the name of the vendor. Yeah, so basically we started off kind of being like, well, there's a lot of issues. They weren't really talking to us. We tried reaching out on Twitter, we tried reaching out emails, we tried reaching out however we could. And they really weren't looking at talking to us in general. And then the FBI got involved and were like, well, Las Vegas, big. Money in Las Vegas is a pretty big issue. So let's kind of talk to these guys and see what they have. And they kind of reached out to us and were like, well, what did you guys find? Because we'd love to kind of talk to that vendor and see what's happening. So, we were like, okay, we're going back a bit. But yeah, so after, and it's, if you want to look up after the event, there's quite a nice news article about it and every email we have. But really, we basically ended up in a nice long conversation with FBI. They contacted the vendor. The vendor got into a meeting, a conference call with us. We ended up disclosing to them. They were like, shit. And basically, it went on from there. Until, we were basically told, okay, we want to buy you out. And we were like, okay. So we kind of gave them, think of, oh yeah, you guys want to buy us out. Here's, the time we spent, because, we run a company as well. So, we were doing about 140 hours then, and, we kind of gave them our cost, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. So, they were like, okay, so, we're going, what, 11th, 11th, we're going to, we don't have the time there, 11th, yeah. So basically, several months passed, and it was kind of getting to the edge where it was like, probably almost half a year of discussing this entire thing, and trying to get it wrapped up with. And none of this time we were focused on getting it fixed because they didn't really care about getting it fixed. So every time we emailed them back and we were like, well, what's going on? And they were like, no, we're going to get, we're going to get some kind of contracts done. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. We're going to, basically give you an NDA, and that's going to be it. And okay. So they were like, okay, while we, manage these financial aspects, can you delete your tweets? Like, kind of just get rid of the whole thing. And we're like, sure. So, what are we on now? We're on the January 20th, basically. And we were like, well, by then, we kind of went, well, what's going on? It's been several months, 3 months later, and nothing's really happened. And it's just like, what's going to happen? So, next Friday was actually, surprisingly, the day after a casino event was held, ICE, International Casino Expo. So we decided to, pay a visit to ICE, and we actually didn't do that just to kind of harass the vendor or anything. We did that because we actually had a few clients who were also actually presented there. So we actually went there on kind of a goodwill basis to say, hey, we've been talking to you guys for a while, what's up? And so we did that. And really what happened was not what you'd expect. They actually, in the end, kind of assaulted myself, and they kind of went dark after that. In fact, they actually gave us a nice legal letter basically that same day, which was basically, we're going to talk to the FBI, we're going to get everyone involved, and we're going to kind of, sue you off the face of the earth. And we looked at it and we're like, that's not really a legal letter, but go ahead, entertain yourselves. And we let everything kind of take its course. We actually stepped back from this one and didn't decide to disclose too much because we're not really going to entertain them that much. That seemed like a kind of childish way of doing things. But that was kind of the way forward for them. But then, a few months later, we had a nice incident with a financial organisation, one which I cannot talk about their name because we're under confidentiality, but we can kind of discuss the steps forward on that. So the context there is really, I actually tweeted a few of the issues that I found with them after not being able to communicate with them for quite a long time. I tried to reach out to the CISO on basically LinkedIn. I tried to reach out to the information, the ICO of the organisation, the data protection officer. They basically kind of were like, hey, on LinkedIn, basically like a automated response. I was like, hey, these are the issues, and they were just like left us on scene, and I was like, okay, well, that's not really going to fix anything, but we did try to disclose. So I kind of did a bit more tweeting. I talked to CERT in the end. So I actually talked to basically CERT Romania, and CERT Romania was like, oh, this is great, and we ended up taking it to DMs, and we kind of talked about the issues. They tried to speak to the actual company themselves, and the company themselves did speak to them in the end. But they kind of weren't really buying anything. They actually took a nice approach where they kind of vulnerabilities don't exist. What are you talking about? Show us the proof that you actually did anything. So we actually did that. And we actually did that in such a way where we kind of took it public, but we made it majorly redacted, where we didn't really show anything serious because there's customer information involved. There's a lot of things which you don't really want to put public. So we made it where it was like, they know it's going to be us, they knew it was their systems, and this is probably going to have the best reach to them. And in the end, they actually emailed us. Actually, they didn't email us. Someone else emailed us. Sorry, I had to redact it quite a lot. But basically, they actually hired someone else to email us for them. And that person basically was like, I was asked by the bank to get in touch with you, and I'd love to know what you found. And we can actually discuss that further if you can contact me first. So we actually had to do our due diligence that this person was actually buying the bank. So the bank in the end actually had to say to us, the CISO from the bank actually had to say, yes, we did actually ask this guy to talk to us. So we went there. Long story short, they actually were great. They were like, you know what, we're actually going to hire you because we do actually have these issues. And they actually gave us kind of an example, how should we do this? How should we hire you directly? Should we go for a bug bounty program? And they kind of went, you know what, HackerOne might work. How do you want to do it? Because we're kind of free range. And this email is quite interesting because they don't really want to shy away from the fact that you might be bad guys at the same time. So they kind of went, you know what, this is the funny thing. So the first part underlined, I actually tweeted kind of jokingly. I was like, I actually have a bit of debt. It would be great to wipe that one day. And they actually responded in such a way where they were like, you know what, we saw that tweet and that's the figure we're going to pay you. Basically, we're not going to pay you any other figure, we're not going to pay you a normal figure, we're going to pay you exactly that figure that you tweeted out is your debt figure. Kind of like a, you know what, do you want to get out of debt? Do you want to get out of debt? So we were like, you know what, I can take that, I'll take a bit off of it, to pay my colleagues, to pay everyone in the company. And that's what we did. But at the same time, if you look at the email, it's kind of interesting. They kind of, at the same time, were like, well, we're not going to kind of give you that legal liability sense. So we're kind of going to, leave litigation as an option in case you guys do something wrong, or in case we just feel like suing you. So that was kind of an issue for us, and we're like, well, okay, we'll try and see past that. We'll try and do what we can to get this relationship going, get this, client going, and we kind of entertained them in a sense, and we're like, yeah, fine, let's do this. So they did actually explain, hey, here's Tesla's actual security thing. So they actually knew quite a lot about it. They actually had quite a few certifications behind them as well, so I was surprised they actually had one as they did. So lo and behold, after probably, we're on April, I believe, yeah. So April, and we started it probably on December. So it took quite some time. But in the end, we actually got to the sense where we could actually, finally get an agreement across, and we came up with our assessment report, and we were able to close the deal with them that way. But interestingly, I did leave a few things unredacted. I left Eternal Blue, because they actually left Eternal Blue on their network. So like, why not? These are production servers, and we can't really change that. So let's just leave it that way. So that was kind of an issue for us. We actually had to raise a thing where we're like, well, stuff our deadlines, we actually have to tell you this is actually vulnerable. And they just told us, well, it's production, and we know about that. Fun. Another thing is, well, weak credentials. A lot of the time, I find weak credentials are a big thing in organizations. A lot of people actually leave their credentials really just out there, kind of in the common where, we don't really care what our developers do. They can do whatever they want. They can have their own, credentials as just, kind of just numbers, or even worse, just letters, or the company name, which is even worse. But that happens a lot, and that's kind of just a normal thing that we get along with. So what is happening? I'll let Sarah get along with that and talk about the nice kind of legal ramifications that we get involved in.
Yeah. So I imagine most people know what hacking is, but we'll quickly go through it just in case whoever's watching this or whoever's in the audience doesn't. So hacking is quite a general term, but most often refers to unauthorized access into a network or computer. The motives are often to cause damage or to gain steal information or for financial gain. So hackers can either be black hats, which are criminals motivated by their own personal gain, or white hats, who work to find system vulnerabilities legally, in scope, and often with permission. We'll be talking more about the white hat side. So what is hacking? So these are the offences to consider when you're looking into possibly what you can do. There's quite a lot. We're going to go through the Computer Misuse Act and also the US equivalent. So first of all, talking about the ISO. So ISO is the International Standards Organization for Standardization. They're very useful if you're a student or maybe your company has these. They're free. Otherwise, they cost, I think, about £60-ish to £90 each. So ISO 29147 from 2018 is one of the most relevant ones when you're doing responsible disclosure. And it covers the terms and definitions and an overview on vulnerability disclosure, techniques and policies with examples, guidelines on receiving reports about vulnerabilities, and guidelines on disclosing vulnerability remediation. So it's useful both for companies and security researchers looking to disclose. The ISO also provides another interesting and relatable guidelines, 30111. So this is on how to process and resolve potential vulnerability information. It provides policy and organizational framework to implement vulnerability disclosure, and also provides vulnerability handling process. So there are a few other relevant ones, including how to manage risks in ICT, supply chain attacks, responding to risks in organizational and technical processes, and how to integrate security into your business. So these are pretty useful if you're, as a company, you're looking to get into setting up a kind of a process for responsible disclosure, vulnerability disclosure, and how to handle it like internally. So I'm just going to pause on this. This is a framework, and it shows how the two ones I've talked about, how they kind of work together. So moving on to the legal issues. So in the UK, there's the Computer Misuse Act, and in the US, there's the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So if you're dealing with companies in the UK or the US, both of these will be relevant. So moving on to the Computer Misuse Act. So this is a piece of law that was written for the crime of accessing or modifying data stored in a computer system which you do not have access or you've not been authorized to access. So there's three different sections to it, kind of going up in severity. So the first one is unauthorized access to computer material. The second one is unauthorized access with intent to commit or facilitate further crimes. And the third one is unauthorized modification of computer material. So if you're found guilty of this crime, you can get up to 12 months in prison, unlimited fine, or both for Section 1. 12 months unlimited fine on summary convictions, or 5 years and a fine for indictment up to. And 12 months unlimited fine for Section 3 on a summary conviction, or 10 years and a fine on an indictment for Section 3. However, I was looking through a list of all the convictions on the Computer Misuse Act over the last 2 years, and most that were found guilty get less than half the time and often no fine. There's only very few cases where they got the 10 years. One of the cases was where one of the criminals was running a massive ransomware campaign for about, I think, 3 or 4 years. It used to be back when screen lockers were a big thing, and they probably made millions from it. And they were the only person I could see who got the 10 years and a big fine. So moving on to the US laws. So the federal criminal law makes unauthorized access of any computer to obtain certain prohibited information, or a protected computer such as federal or financial institutions, or used by interstate foreign commerce and communications. So kind of similar to the UK one. Over the years, the law has been expanded. In 1994, it moved beyond criminal matters to cover civil actions, which actually proved to be quite an issue. It allows corporations now to bring lawsuits against citizens. So I'm sure most people are familiar with the Aaron Swartz case, where he had a little bit of trouble where he was supposedly, I think it was MIT, yeah, so he basically kind of looked into that, trying to just kind of see what he could get into, and in the end, even though the university didn't want to bring any charges against him, the government decided that they would still want to bring charges against him, and then eventually he committed suicide because of the stress of having to deal with the criminal convictions. So they basically suggested that the law be amended to exclude terms of service breaches and kind of more minimal kind of intrusions into systems because of the Aaron Swartz case. But this failed to pass in both 2013 and 2015. EFF was a big supporter of this bill, and they still continue to work to hopefully try and get it passed. But so far, no such luck. So the maximum sentencing for the Computer Fraud and Misuse Abuse Act is 20 years and a fine, and even small misdemeanors, even the most basic intrusions, can get up to 5 years at a fine. So a lot more severe than the UK laws. And this act has been used against like hackers and activists who have tried to do legal disclosure, but it's considered undesirable, and these companies, because they haven't liked it, they basically tried to prosecute them legally. So this sounds pretty bad so far. But in the UK, in 2018, the Cyber Vulnerability Disclosure Reporting Act was passed in the US. Basically, it requires the government of Homeland Security to submit a report every year to Congress on how the government has dealt with disclosing vulnerabilities that year. There's a redacted or possibly redacted section where it contains descriptions of the policies which were used for coordinating disclosure and where these policies were used. And also, in terms of the UK, also in 2018, the NCSE published a page on how to report vulnerabilities in government websites or systems. They use HackerOne. HackerOne is a bug bounty program. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. And it's used by many hackers. So whilst there's no bug bounty, this is a really good step in the right direction. The government is trying to support hackers supporting vulnerabilities in their websites and systems. So how do companies or entities deal with disclosure? So GCHQ actually has a nice page on how they deal with vulnerability disclosure. They use the ISO standards on how to approach disclosure and kind of coordinate it with the company. So they take the stand of not defining a set time fix. They basically take as long as the vendor does to try and fix it. And they won't disclose a vulnerability until an actual fix has been made. However, if the vendor is unable to resolve the vulnerability or is unwilling to resolve the vulnerability, then they will then strike up a conversation of what to do next. And if they believe it's within public interest, they will then share the vulnerability information with service providers and customers. So moving on to Google. Google's a pretty well-known one. I think most people should be familiar with this, but they give vendors 90 days to fix, from the date they disclose, to fix the vulnerability, and that is their hard deadline. So either after the 90 days are up or the vendor has provided a fix publicly, they will then release details on the vulnerability that they found. However, if the vulnerability is actively being exploited as a 0-day, for example, they then only give 7 days before they will detail the fix. This is because Google believes that if something's being exploiting in the wild, it's much more important that it gets fixed straight away. And they realize that not necessarily a company will have a fix straight away, but they should have some kind of public kind of mitigation in process, or kind of what to do if you're hit by this, or if your company runs this piece of software. So moving on to Safe Harbor. So Safe Harbor is, when adopted by a company, is the principle that they will not threaten or bring legal action against a researcher as long as they comply with their rules, either a bug bounty or as long as they stay within scope. So this is different to how the financial organization did it, where they said they may take financial action, they may take legal action against you. And a kind of interesting project on GitHub is #LegalBugBounty, and this is a project that tries to provide standardization for how to approach Safe Harbor. They have like a kind of paragraph on what you can put on your website as a paragraph of, yes, we won't sue you if you follow what we outlined below. A few companies actually have Safe Harbor. For example, Microsoft, Mozilla, Disclose.io is BugCrowd's framework for Safe Harbor. BugCrowd is another bug bounty program similar to HackerOne that I mentioned before. And also Chartermill. they all have Safe Harbor, and many other companies, but you can put more on the slide. So moving on, so this is the typical structure of a vulnerability disclosure policy. So if you want to implement this into your own company, or this is what you should look for in a company when you're looking to get responsible disclosure. So first of all, it's important to have an introduction of why you've created this vulnerability disclosure policy and why it's important. This is mostly for customers. They know, oh, why are these people asking for vulnerabilities? And also for people who are invested in your company, so they are on like, oh, these people are asking for vulnerabilities. That means they're insecure. Just to kind of cover yourself. So then have a paragraph about Safe Harbor that I mentioned before. It's important to convey to researchers that if they follow the guidelines, you won't press legal charges. This just kind of like smooths the relationship over, so the researcher feels a lot more comfortable with disclosing fully what they found, without having to worry that they're going to get sued if they've like, if something you've like said, if something they found is quite bad and it could cause a lot of damage. Another important thing is to publish your scope. So basically, publish what and isn't covered in terms of products, and also what vulnerabilities. So for example, you might have an old product that is still out there in the wild, but you know that it's vulnerable. And in terms of vulnerabilities, there might be something like XSS. Normal XSS in general isn't that bad, but if it's XSS that can be stored, that then becomes a lot more severe, and that's something you probably want to know about. Then you should have how to submit. Either it should be a contact point or email. Usually companies will have a security at their domain. That's the best way to do it. And then also a do's and don'ts, anything else that the researcher should know, and also anything that they shouldn't do. So in terms of like, some researchers will want to eventually write a report disclosing the vulnerability they found in your company. If you don't want that, that's something that should be noted there. So just moving on to the difference between vulnerability disclosure policy and bug bounties. So vulnerability disclosure is less structured and relies on researchers contacting you directly. Bug bounties are basically kind of vulnerability disclosure policies, but they're often more structured and they have often monetary compensation as a reward. The monetary compensation is what the company will set, and it depends usually on the severity of the vulnerabilities that have been found. So some companies only have one of these and some have both.
Cool, cool. And basically the takeaway from this is, how do you go about disclosure? Because let's make the long story short. Do they have a bug bounty program? Yes, great. Follow bug bounty programs, guidelines, policies, etc. Do they? No. Okay, so do they have a way to contact them for security? Do they have like a security text basically, or do they have a maybe a location on their site, /security, anything really? Basically something that says this is how you should talk about security, or this is how you get in contact with us about disclosure. But then, it's not always that simple. So, if they don't have, well, if they do have that, great. Just send your report away. If they don't, you're going to have to kind of go for some OSINT kind of techniques. You're going to have to, stalk them in a sense, kind of go on LinkedIn, go on Twitter, go on anything you can kind of, get your hands on, find that they're kind of alert there, and they're going to, pay attention to that. Because that's, kind of your best bet to get the heads up, like, hey, we seem to see some guys talking about our software, or our, programmers insecure, what's going on? And, that's going to get the board kind of, shaking. That's going to get the people in charge, like, what's happening? So, yeah, really just patience. So, going, elsewhere, you can go for cert, you can try and, contact them, if that's great for your legal advice, kind of, in a sense. legislative organisations, up in CERT, there's lots of organisations there who will pay attention to you and kind of get in contact. The ISACs are great, all that. And Safe Harbour is great if you have an issue with that, in a sense where you don't know if you've done something wrong, or maybe you don't want to put your name to it just in case anything could happen. Thank you. Questions?